The Affair of the Vermilion Cipher. Chapter 4. The Trap is Set. A word to our readers, dear readers. As we continue this lengthy chronicle of one of the most complex investigations ever undertaken by Mr. Sherlock Holmes, I find it necessary to present these extraordinary events in successive chapters, that the mind might better digest the intricate details and manifold twists of this most remarkable affair. Each installment builds upon the last, weaving together threads of conspiracy, danger, and deduction into a tapestry whose full pattern shall only be revealed as our narrative reaches its conclusion. For those who join us now, or whose recollection of recent events may benefit from refreshment, permit me to briefly recount the developments detailed in our previous chapter. What has gone before? Following the dramatic confrontation at Ashworth Grange that resulted in Sir Henry's death, and the recovery of what we believed to be the Vermilion Cipher, Holmes and I had scarcely returned to London when a troubling telegram arrived from Lieutenant Colonel Forsyth in Bath. His residence had been burgled in the night, a determined and professional attempt to locate the key to the cipher that he had guarded so faithfully for 5 long years. Though the key remained secure, Holmes's keen mind immediately perceived the alarming implications. If Sir Henry lay 3 days dead, who had dispatched these new villains? The answer pointed to a conclusion as disturbing as it was inescapable. There existed another player in this deadly game, one whose identity and motives remained shrouded in shadow. We hastened to Bath, where Holmes commissioned the talented jeweller Mr. Simmons to create a duplicate of the bronze key, so perfect in its every detail that even an expert eye might be deceived. This counterfeit was to serve as bait in an elaborate trap, for Holmes proposed to spread word that Forsyth, alarmed by the burglary, intended to secure the key in the vault of the local banking establishment. The trap was set with meticulous care. Word was deliberately allowed to reach certain ears in Bath's underworld. We positioned ourselves within the bank vault itself, waiting through the long watches of the night for the criminals to take our bait. And take it they did. 3 men, working with the precision of trained professionals, gained entry to the vault in the small hours of the morning. The confrontation that followed was swift and violent. 2 of the burglars were captured immediately, but the third, a man of remarkable agility and determination, escaped into the night. Holmes and I pursued him through the darkened streets until, cornered in a blind alley, he was compelled to surrender after I was forced to wound him with a shot to the leg. But it was the interrogation of these prisoners that yielded intelligence most alarming. They were members not of the Black Lotus, but of a radical political organization calling itself the Brotherhood of the New Dawn. They had been hired not by Sir Henry Ashworth, whom they knew nothing of, but by a mysterious figure they knew only as the Professor, who communicated solely through coded messages in newspaper columns, and had promised them that the Vermilion Cipher would provide the means to strike a devastating blow against the British Empire. Holmes recognized the hallmarks of a mastermind at work, someone who remained always in the shadows, directing operations through intermediaries, never exposing himself to capture. Through careful manipulation of information and a continuation of the coded newspaper correspondence, Holmes set about drawing this professor into the open, dangling the supposed stolen key as irresistible bait. Chapter 4 begins. And so we return to London, where Holmes embarked upon an intricate game of deception that would span a full week. Each day, coded messages appeared in the personal columns of the Times and Telegraph. Each day, Holmes responded, playing the role of a nervous accomplice who possessed the key and wished to sell it to the highest bidder. "Patience, Watson," Holmes counseled as I fretted over the slow pace of this correspondence. "A fish must be played carefully, particularly when it is a large and dangerous one. The professor must be made to invest himself in this transaction, to believe it genuine, to commit himself to appearing in person. Only then will we have our chance to unmask him." I watched with admiration as my friend wove his web of words, each message carefully crafted to build confidence, to allay suspicion, to draw his quarry ever closer to the snare. The professor, for his part, proved a cautious adversary, demanding assurances, testing the waters, probing for any sign of deception. But at last, on the 7th day of this elaborate correspondence, Holmes announced that the meeting was arranged. "Tomorrow night, Watson, at the old warehouse in Rotherhithe. The professor has agreed to come personally to inspect the key before making payment. We shall have him." "Are you certain he will come himself?" I asked. "Surely a man of such caution would send an agent." "Ah, but that is precisely what I have prevented," Holmes replied with satisfaction. "I have convinced him that his supposed accomplice, that is to say myself in disguise, will deal with no intermediary. That trust has been strained by the narrow escape from Bath, and that only a face-to-face meeting with the principal will suffice. His greed and his desire to possess the key have overcome his caution. Watson, he will come, and when he does, we shall be ready for him." I confess that as the appointed hour approached on the following evening, I felt considerable trepidation. We were about to confront a criminal mastermind of unknown capabilities, a man who had orchestrated events across years and continents, who commanded resources we could only guess at. Yet Holmes seemed utterly confident, his eyes bright with the thrill of the intellectual hunt. Inspector Lestrade and his most trusted men were positioned nearby, ready to intervene at Holmes's signal. I checked my revolver for perhaps the 10th time, ensuring it was fully loaded and ready for use. And Holmes, transformed once more into the rough character of a criminal associate, waited in the shadows of that decrepit Rotherhithe warehouse, the duplicate key in his possession, prepared to meet an enemy whose face we had never seen. The game was about to reach its climax, but neither Holmes nor I could have anticipated just how dangerous and how revealing the next few hours would prove to be. Our narrative continues. Chapter 4: The Web Tightens. I awoke the next morning to find Holmes already up and dressed, though not in his usual attire. He had once again transformed himself, this time into a prosperous city gentleman, complete with top hat, morning coat, and an air of comfortable wealth. His face had been subtly altered with makeup to appear somewhat fuller, and he had adopted a slight limp that completely changed his gait. "Sir Reginald Pettigrew at your service," he said with a slight bow and a perfect upper-class accent. "Recently returned from successful ventures in South Africa, now seeking to establish proper banking relationships in London." "Remarkable," I said, marveling once again at his facility with disguise. "You are an entirely different person." "As I must be, Watson. Cartwrights would never speak freely with Sherlock Holmes, but they will be most accommodating to a potential client of Sir Reginald's evident means. Now you must be off to see Sir Henry. His house is in Belgrave Square, a most fashionable address. Be observant, be subtle, and above all, reveal nothing of our suspicions." After a hasty breakfast, I set out for Belgrave Square. It was a crisp, clear morning, and the streets were busy with the usual London traffic. As I walked, I rehearsed in my mind the questions I would ask and the manner in which I would present myself: concerned friend of the family, medical attendant to the injured brother, nothing more. Sir Henry Ashworth's residence was an imposing townhouse of 4 stories, its facade freshly painted and its brass fittings gleaming in the morning sun. A liveried footman answered my knock, and upon learning my name and purpose, showed me into a well-appointed study to wait while he announced me to his master. I used the time to examine the room. The furnishings were expensive but not ostentatious, the taste of a man who valued quality over display. The walls were lined with books, and I noted that they covered a wide range of subjects, from politics and history to military affairs and Eastern philosophy. Several framed photographs adorned the mantelpiece: family groups, military scenes, and one striking image of 2 young men in uniform whom I took to be Sir Henry and his brother Geoffrey in happier times. The door opened and Sir Henry entered. He was a tall man, perhaps an inch or 2 taller than his brother, with the same military bearing but a harder edge to his features. His hair was prematurely grey at the temples, and there were lines around his eyes and mouth that spoke of worry or perhaps dissipation. He was impeccably dressed in a dark suit, and he regarded me with a frank, assessing gaze that was not unfriendly but was certainly measuring. "Dr. Watson," he said, extending his hand, My brother has spoken of you. I understand you were present when he was injured. Please sit down and tell me how he fares." I took the offered seat and provided a brief medical report on Geoffrey's condition, assuring Sir Henry that the wound was not serious and that his brother would make a full recovery. Sir Henry listened intently, his expression grave. "I am relieved to hear it," he said when I had finished. "This whole affair has been most distressing. Geoffrey wrote to me yesterday, telling me of the attack and of Mr. Holmes's involvement in the case. I confess I am not certain what to make of it all. Geoffrey has been so consumed with attempting to clear his name that I fear he has placed himself in danger. Mr. Holmes believes that your brother was unjustly accused," I said carefully, watching his reaction. "He has evidence suggesting that the theft of the documents was carried out by a criminal organization hired by someone else." Sir Henry's expression did not change, but I noticed that his hands tightened slightly on the arms of his chair. "That would be welcome news indeed, if it could be proven. Geoffrey's disgrace has been a heavy burden for our entire family, but surely, if there were evidence of his innocence, it would have emerged during the original investigation. The evidence has only recently come to light," I explained. "Mr. Holmes has been making inquiries that have led him to believe that a Chinese criminal society called the Black Lotus was responsible for the actual theft." "The Black Lotus?" Sir Henry's tone was carefully neutral, but I thought I detected a flicker of something, recognition, concern in his eyes. "I have heard that name, I think. They are reputed to be quite dangerous." "Indeed they are. They were hired to steal the documents, and more recently they were hired to kill your brother. Mr. Holmes believes that whoever commissioned the original theft now views Geoffrey as a threat. But why? What threat could Geoffrey possibly pose? He knows nothing about the actual theft." "That is what we are attempting to determine," I said. "Sir Henry, I wonder if I might ask you some questions about your own service in India. Mr. Holmes is exploring every possible angle, and your experiences there might shed some light on the matter." "Certainly," Sir Henry said, though I sensed a new wariness in his manner. "What would you like to know? You served under Sir Charles Pemberton, did you not?" The change in Sir Henry was subtle but unmistakable. His posture stiffened and his eyes became guarded. "I did, for a brief period." "Why do you ask?" "Mr. Holmes has been researching the intelligence operations in India during that period. He believes that the documents stolen from your brother may have related to intelligence matters." "Did you have any involvement with intelligence work while you were serving?" "No," Sir Henry said flatly. "I was a line officer, nothing more. My duties were straightforward military matters. I had no connection to intelligence operations." It was a lie. I knew it as surely as if Holmes himself had been there to whisper it in my ear. The manner in which Sir Henry spoke, the way he held his body, the careful neutrality of his tone, all spoke of deception. But I gave no sign that I had detected it. "I see," I said mildly. "I apologize if my questions seem impertinent. Mr. Holmes is simply being thorough in his investigation." "Of course," Sir Henry replied, his manner relaxing slightly. "I want nothing more than to see my brother's name cleared. If there is anything I can do to assist Mr. Holmes in his inquiries, he has only to ask." We spoke for a few more minutes about neutral matters, Geoffrey's recovery, the arrangements for his care, Sir Henry's political work in Parliament. Throughout, I maintained my casual, friendly demeanor while observing everything I could about the man and his surroundings. As I was preparing to leave, my eye fell upon a small object on Sir Henry's desk, a paperweight made of jade, carved in the form of a dragon. It was a fine piece, clearly of Chinese manufacture, and I remarked upon it. "A beautiful object," I said. "Is it a souvenir from your time in India?" Sir Henry glanced at it, and for just a moment his mask slipped. I saw something in his eyes, guilt, fear, before he recovered his composure. "Yes, a trifle I picked up years ago. I have always appreciated Oriental art." As I left the house and walked back toward Baker Street, my mind was racing. Sir Henry was hiding something, of that I was certain. His denial of any connection to intelligence work was false, and his reaction to my mention of Pemberton had been telling. And that jade dragon, there was something about it that had disturbed him when I mentioned it. I found Holmes already returned from his visit to Cartwright's bank. He had shed his disguise and was pacing the sitting room with barely contained energy. "Watson," he exclaimed as I entered, "what did you learn?" I recounted my interview with Sir Henry in detail, omitting nothing. Holmes listened with intense concentration, occasionally interrupting with sharp questions about specific details of Sir Henry's reactions and manner. "Excellent work, Watson," he said when I had finished. "Your observations confirm my own suspicions. Sir Henry is indeed involved in this affair, though whether as the mastermind or merely as an accomplice remains to be determined." "What did you learn at the bank?" I asked. "A great deal, though not everything I had hoped. The special currency marked with Cartwright's seal is indeed issued only to their most valued clients, fewer than 20 individuals in all of London. The bank maintains absolute discretion about the identity of these clients, of course, but I was able to learn that one such issue was made in the autumn of 1893, shortly before the theft of the documents from Major Ashworth. The issue consisted of 100 gold sovereigns, marked with the seal Wang Tai described. Can you identify who received them? Not through official channels, no, but I have my methods, Watson. I managed to accidentally observe the bank's ledger for that period, while the manager was called away on some pretended urgent matter. The issue was made to an account held in the name of the Vermilion Society." "The Vermilion Society," I exclaimed. "Holmes, that cannot be coincidence. There are no coincidences in an affair of this magnitude, Watson. The Vermilion Society, whether it is an actual organization or merely a convenient fiction, is at the heart of this mystery. I have set inquiries in motion to learn what I can about any such society, but I suspect we shall find that it is a front, a way of obscuring the true identity of the individual or individuals behind these crimes. What is our next move? We must speak with the other men on Pemberton's list. Major Blackwood is in Cairo and thus beyond our immediate reach. Captain Waverley is dead. Colonel Hartley is also deceased. That leaves Lieutenant Colonel Forsyth in Bath. I propose that we travel there tomorrow to interview him. But tonight, Watson, we must take precautions to ensure Major Ashworth's safety. The Black Lotus will surely make another attempt on his life, and we must be prepared to thwart it. Do you think they will strike at the hospital? I think they will strike wherever they believe they can succeed. A hospital is not an ideal location for an assassination. Too many witnesses, too much activity. But if they are desperate enough, they may risk it. I have sent word to Lestrade asking him to post constables near the hospital, though I have not told him the full extent of what we know. The official police are not equipped to deal with an organization like the Black Lotus. Should we not move Ashworth to a safer location? Where would be safer, Watson? Here in Baker Street. That would merely draw the danger to our own doorstep. No, I think he is safest where he is, surrounded by hospital staff and, as of this evening, protected by police constables. But we must also set a trap, Watson. We must use Ashworth as bait to draw out our enemies. Holmes, I protested, you cannot seriously propose to use an injured man as bait. I do not propose it lightly, and I shall not do so without Ashworth's consent. But consider, Watson, the Black Lotus has been hired to kill him. They will not abandon their contract simply because their first attempt failed. They will try again and again until they succeed or until their employer calls them off. Our best chance of protecting Ashworth in the long term is to identify and apprehend those behind the plot. And to do that, we must catch them in the act. I was not entirely comfortable with this plan, but I could see the logic of it. What did you have in mind? Tomorrow evening, after we return from Bath, we shall arrange for word to be spread in certain quarters, the opium dens and gambling houses of Limehouse, where the Black Lotus has ears, that Major Ashworth is being moved from St. Bartholomew's to a private nursing home in Hampstead. We shall provide a specific time and route for this transfer. The Black Lotus will almost certainly attempt to intercept and kill him during the move. And we shall be waiting for them, I said, beginning to understand. Precisely, but the man in the ambulance will not be Major Ashworth. It will be a police officer of similar build, heavily disguised. Major Ashworth will remain safely in the hospital. We shall ambush the ambushers, Watson, and perhaps in doing so, we shall learn more about who has hired them. It is a dangerous plan. All worthwhile plans involve danger, but I believe it is our best chance. Now I suggest we take a late luncheon and then pay a visit to Major Ashworth to discuss this with him. We must have his cooperation if we are to succeed. We found Major Ashworth in good spirits, his wound healing well and his colour much improved. When Holmes outlined his plan, the Major agreed at once, despite my medical objections. Mr. Holmes, if there is a chance that your plan will lead to the capture of those responsible for my disgrace, I am willing to take any risk, Ashworth declared. I have lived under a cloud for 2 years. If I must continue to live in danger while you pursue your investigation, so be it. At least now I know that someone believes in my innocence and is working to prove it. Your courage does you credit, Major, Holmes said. But I want you to understand the risks. The Black Lotus are professional killers. If they penetrate our deception, if they somehow learn that you remain in the hospital, they will not hesitate to strike here. I understand. What would you have me do? Remain here exactly as you have been doing. Receive no visitors except Dr. Watson and myself. Trust no one, not the hospital staff, not even old friends who might call upon you. The Black Lotus are masters of disguise and infiltration, and carry this with you at all times. Holmes produced a small pistol from his coat pocket and handed it to Ashworth. It is a pocket revolver fully loaded. If anyone makes an attempt on your life, do not hesitate to use it. Shoot first and ask questions afterward. Ashworth took the weapon and checked it with the practiced efficiency of a military man. I shall not hesitate, Mr. Holmes. You have my word on that. We left the hospital as evening was falling, and Holmes insisted that we walk rather than take a cab. I want to see if we are being followed, Watson. The Black Lotus may well have set watchers on the hospital, and I want to know if they are observing us as well. We walked through the darkening streets, Holmes occasionally glancing into shop windows to observe the reflections of those behind us. After 20 minutes of this, he seemed satisfied. I believe we are clear, Watson. If there were watchers, they were too skilled for me to detect, which I doubt. Come, let us return to Baker Street. We have a long day ahead of us tomorrow. The remainder of the evening was spent in preparation for our journey to Bath. Holmes consulted his railway timetable, sent several telegrams to various contacts, and pored over his notes from the case, looking for connections and patterns that might have been missed. I cleaned and loaded my revolver, checked my medical bag, and laid out my traveling clothes for the morning. As I was preparing to retire for the night, Holmes called out to me from his study. Watson, come and look at this. I joined him at his desk, where he had spread out several photographs and documents. These are images I have obtained of the men who served under Pemberton. Look at this one. It was taken at a regimental dinner in Calcutta in 1888. The photograph showed a group of British officers in full dress uniform, posed formally for the camera. Holmes pointed to several figures in the group. That is Pemberton in the centre. To his left, Major Edmund Blackwood. To his right, Captain Thomas Waverley, now deceased. And here, his finger moved to a young officer standing slightly apart from the others, Captain Sir Henry Ashworth. I studied the photograph carefully. Sir Henry looked much younger, his face unlined, his bearing confident. But there was something in his expression, a certain intensity that seemed familiar. Look at his hands, Watson, Holmes directed. I looked more closely. Sir Henry's hands were clasped before him in a formal pose, and on the third finger of his right hand, barely visible in the photograph, was a ring. Do you see it? Look at the design on that ring. I squinted at the image. The ring appeared to bear some sort of seal or crest. I cannot make it out clearly. No, but I can. I have examined this photograph under magnification. The ring bears the seal of Cartwright's Bank, a circle with a cross inside, and within the cross, 3 small dots arranged in a triangle. The same mark that appears on their special issue currency. I felt a chill run down my spine. Then Sir Henry is definitely involved. So it would appear, but there is more, Watson. Look at this other photograph taken at the same dinner. He indicated another image, this one showing a smaller group of officers in more casual conversation. Among them was Sir Henry, and standing beside him, engaged in apparently friendly discourse, was a Chinese gentleman in traditional dress. "Who is that?" I asked. "I do not know his name, but I have my suspicions. The timing is right, the location is right. Watson, I believe that Chinese gentleman may well be Lei Chen, the silk merchant who later infiltrated Major Ashworth's quarters and stole the documents. And he is shown here in friendly conversation with Sir Henry Ashworth, more than 5 years before the theft occurred. Good Lord, then Sir Henry and Lei Chen were already acquainted before the theft. It would certainly appear so. This photograph establishes a connection between them that predates the crime by many years. Watson, I believe we are close to understanding the full scope of this conspiracy. Sir Henry Ashworth, motivated by financial need and political ambition, hired the Black Lotus to steal documents from his own brother. Those documents contained information about the location of one half of the Vermilion Cipher. Sir Henry has spent the past 2 years searching for that cipher, and he has been unsuccessful. Now he has decided that his brother must die, either because Geoffrey poses some threat Sir Henry has not anticipated, or simply to tie up loose ends before he makes his final move to obtain the cipher. But why does Sir Henry want the cipher? I asked. What does he intend to do with it? That, Watson, is the question I cannot yet answer, but I suspect it has to do with his political ambitions. Imagine the power such information would convey, the ability to identify and expose British intelligence agents throughout Asia. Such knowledge could be sold for an enormous sum to Britain's enemies, or it could be used for blackmail or for any number of other nefarious purposes. A man with such information at his command would be virtually untouchable. We must stop him, Holmes. Indeed, we must. But first we must gather more evidence. The photograph is suggestive but not conclusive. We need something more, something that will prove beyond doubt Sir Henry's guilt and allow us to act against him. That is why we must interview Lieutenant Colonel Forsyth tomorrow. He may know something about Pemberton, about the cipher, about Sir Henry, that will give us the final piece of the puzzle. We retired shortly afterward, though I found sleep difficult. The case had grown far more complex than I had initially imagined, and the stakes were higher than I had dared to think. We were not merely trying to clear an innocent man's name or prevent a murder. We were attempting to prevent the compromise of Britain's entire intelligence apparatus in Asia. The weight of that responsibility lay heavy upon my mind as I finally drifted into an uneasy slumber. Chapter V. The Bath Connection. The morning train to Bath departed Paddington Station at 8 o'clock sharp. Holmes and I secured a first-class compartment to ourselves, which allowed us to speak freely about the case during the journey. The countryside rolled past the windows, green and pleasant in the early spring sunshine, but neither of us paid it much attention. Our minds were fixed on what we might learn from Lieutenant Colonel Forsyth. I have made some inquiries about Forsyth, Holmes said, consulting his notebook. He retired from active service in 1890, shortly after Pemberton left India. He settled in Bath, where he lives on his military pension and a modest inheritance from an aunt. He is said to be a scholar of sorts, a student of Oriental languages and cultures. He lives quietly, avoids society, and spends most of his time in study. In short, Watson, he sounds like exactly the sort of man to whom Pemberton might have entrusted sensitive information. Do you think he has the cipher? I asked. I think he may know where it is, or at least where one half of it is hidden. Remember, Watson, the cipher was split into 2 parts, the coded text itself and the key to decoding it. Pemberton would have placed them in different hands, ensuring that neither could be used without the other. If Sir Henry has been searching for the cipher, it stands to reason that he already possesses one half and is desperately seeking the other. But if the document stolen from Major Ashworth contained the location of one half, why has Sir Henry not yet found it? An excellent question. Perhaps the information in the documents was less specific than he had hoped. Perhaps it was itself encoded in some way that he has not yet been able to decipher. Or perhaps, and this is what I am beginning to suspect, Major Ashworth himself possesses some piece of information that is necessary to locate the cipher, information he does not even realize he has. What sort of information? That, Watson, is what we must determine. But consider, Major Ashworth was in charge of highly sensitive documents. He was trusted with materials that would have been seen by very few people. It is possible that among those documents was something relating to the cipher, something so obscure that even Ashworth did not recognize its significance. And perhaps Sir Henry knows this, which is why he has now decided his brother must die. Perhaps he fears that we will discover this information and use it to find the cipher before he can. The train arrived in Bath shortly before noon, and we took a cab to the address Holmes had obtained for Lieutenant Colonel Forsyth. It proved to be a small but respectable house in a quiet residential street, surrounded by a well-tended garden. The neighborhood was genteel and peaceful, far removed from the dangers and intrigues of London. Our knock was answered by an elderly woman who identified herself as Mrs. Hobbs, the housekeeper. When Holmes presented his card and explained that we wished to speak with Colonel Forsyth on a matter of some importance, she showed us into a comfortable sitting room and went to fetch her employer. The room was lined with bookshelves, and the books themselves were a fascinating collection: military histories, works on Oriental languages, ancient Chinese poetry in both the original and in translation, and treatises on cryptography and code breaking. There were also several curious objects displayed on shelves and tables: jade figurines, bronze vessels, silk scrolls covered with elegant calligraphy. "Gentlemen," a voice said from the doorway, "I am Peter Forsyth. Mrs. Hobbs tells me you wish to speak with me on an urgent matter." The man who entered was perhaps 60 years old, spare and erect, with iron-grey hair and keen blue eyes that missed nothing. His face was deeply lined, speaking of years spent in harsh climates and difficult circumstances, but his manner was alert and vigorous despite his age. He was dressed simply but well, and he moved with the quiet confidence of a man who had faced danger and survived. Holmes introduced us both and briefly explained the purpose of our visit, though he was careful to reveal only so much as was necessary. He mentioned the theft from Major Ashworth, the attempts on the Major's life, and our investigation into the affair. He did not immediately mention Pemberton or the Vermilion Cipher, choosing instead to observe Forsyth's reactions as the conversation progressed. Forsyth listened intently, his expression grave. "I remember Geoffrey Ashworth," he said when Holmes had finished. "A fine officer, thoroughly dedicated to his duty. I was shocked when I heard of the theft and his subsequent disgrace. I found it difficult to believe that he could have been negligent, much less treasonous. Your investigation suggests that my instincts were correct. You served under Sir Charles Pemberton, did you not?" Holmes asked, changing the subject abruptly. Forsyth's expression became instantly guarded. "I did. Why do you ask?" "Because we believe that the documents stolen from Major Ashworth related to intelligence matters, possibly to operations that were under Pemberton's command. We are attempting to understand what information those documents might have contained and why someone would go to such lengths to obtain them." "Mr. Holmes," Forsyth said carefully, "you are asking me about matters that are still classified even after all these years. I took an oath of secrecy regarding my work under Pemberton. I cannot violate that oath even for you." "I respect your integrity, Colonel," Holmes replied, "but I must ask you to consider the gravity of the situation. An innocent man has been disgraced and is now targeted for murder. British intelligence assets may be at risk, and there is reason to believe that someone with resources and connections is seeking to obtain something of immense strategic value. I am referring, Colonel, to the Vermilion Cipher." The effect of Holmes's words was dramatic. Forsyth went pale, and his hand gripped the arm of his chair so tightly that his knuckles showed white. "How do you know that name?" he demanded, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have my sources," Holmes said calmly, "and I have reason to believe that you, Colonel Forsyth, may be one of the last men alive who knows the truth about the cipher. Sir Charles Pemberton created it, did he not? And when he left India he placed it, or part of it, in the care of someone he trusted absolutely. Was that someone you, Colonel?" Forsyth rose from his chair and walked to the window, staring out at his peaceful garden. For a long moment he said nothing, clearly wrestling with some internal conflict. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy with emotion. Sir Charles Pemberton was the finest man I ever knew. He was brilliant, dedicated, and utterly committed to the defense of British interests in India. He was also profoundly suspicious of the bureaucracy that governed our intelligence operations. He feared that the networks he had built up over decades could be compromised by incompetence, corruption, or treachery within the official channels. So he created the Vermilion Cipher, a complete record of our intelligence assets throughout Asia, encoded using the most sophisticated methods available. He turned to face us, his expression troubled. The cipher was his masterwork, Mr. Holmes, but it was also his greatest fear. He knew that if it fell into the wrong hands, the consequences would be catastrophic, so he divided it. The cipher itself, the encoded list of names, locations, and protocols, he entrusted to one person. The key to decoding it he gave to another, and he told no one, not even those two individuals, the identity of the other person who held the corresponding part. "And you, Colonel?" Holmes prompted gently. "Which part did you receive?" Forsyth was silent for a moment, then sighed deeply. "I have the key, Mr. Holmes. Pemberton gave it to me shortly before he left India, with strict instructions that it was never to be used unless the most extreme circumstances required it, and never without the authorization of the highest levels of government. I have kept it safe all these years, hidden where no one would think to look for it." "Do you still have it?" Holmes asked urgently. "I do. Would you like to see it?" Without waiting for a response, Forsyth went to one of the bookshelves and removed a volume, a copy of Herodotus's Histories in Greek. He opened it to a specific page and carefully removed from a hollowed-out cavity within the book a small object wrapped in oiled silk. He unwrapped it to reveal a disc of bronze, perhaps 3 inches in diameter, and engraved with intricate symbols and characters. It looked ancient, almost like an archaeological artifact, but I could see that the engravings were crisp and clear, the work of a skilled craftsman. "This is the key," Forsyth said, holding it up to the light. "These symbols represent a complex substitution cipher, one that Pemberton himself devised based on ancient Chinese and Sanskrit texts. Without this key, the Vermilion Cipher is meaningless. With it, the entire intelligence network becomes visible." "Colonel," Holmes said with great seriousness, "I believe that someone is actively searching for this key. The theft from Major Ashworth was the first step in that search. The attempts on his life suggest that the search has become desperate. I must ask you, has anyone approached you recently, asking questions about Pemberton or about intelligence matters from that period?" Forsyth frowned. "Not recently, no, but some years ago, it must have been 1893 or thereabouts, I received a visitor here in Bath. He claimed to be a researcher writing a history of British intelligence operations in India. He asked me many questions about Pemberton and about my own service. I was careful to reveal nothing of significance, but I confess that his interest seemed somewhat excessive. At the time, I attributed it to scholarly enthusiasm. Now I wonder, can you describe this visitor? He was a gentleman in his late 30s or early 40s, well-spoken, clearly educated. He said his name was Richards, Dr. Martin Richards, and he claimed to be affiliated with Cambridge University. He was particularly interested in Pemberton's methods of securing sensitive information. His physical appearance," Holmes pressed, "tall, perhaps 6 feet or slightly more, with grey hair beginning to show at the temples. His features were regular, rather distinguished. He had the bearing of a military man despite his civilian dress. There was a scar, I recall, on his left hand, a thin white line across the back of it." Holmes and I exchanged glances. The description could fit Sir Henry Ashworth, though it could also fit many other men of similar age and background. "Did you tell him anything of substance?" Holmes asked. "Nothing. I informed him that I was bound by oath not to discuss intelligence matters, and suggested he contact the War Office through official channels. He seemed disappointed, but accepted my refusal gracefully. He left shortly afterward, and I never heard from him again." "Colonel Forsyth," Holmes said, his voice taking on an urgent tone, "I believe that your life may be in danger." If the person seeking the Vermilion Cipher discovers that you possess the key, he will not hesitate to take it by force. The same organization that attacked Major Ashworth, the Black Lotus, may well be sent to acquire the key from you. Forsyth smiled grimly. Mr. Holmes, I am not unaware of the dangers. I have lived with this responsibility for over 5 years. I have taken precautions. This house is more secure than it appears, and I am not without means to defend myself. He gestured to a drawer in his desk. I keep a loaded revolver within reach at all times, and I am still, despite my age, a capable shot. Nevertheless, Holmes insisted, I would urge you to take additional precautions. Perhaps you might consider removing yourself to London, where Watson and I could provide more direct protection, and bring the danger to your doorstep. I think not, Mr. Holmes. Besides, if whoever is searching for the key has not found me in 5 years, I doubt they will do so now. No, I shall remain here, where I have the advantage of familiar ground. Holmes was clearly not satisfied with this response, but he recognized the stubborn determination in Forsyth's manner. Very well, Colonel, but I must ask one more thing of you. The cipher itself, do you know where it is? Did Pemberton tell you who held the other half? He did not, and I never asked. That was the point, you see, complete separation, so that even under torture neither of us could betray the other. But I have my suspicions, Mr. Holmes. There were only a handful of men whom Pemberton trusted absolutely, and most of them are now dead. If I had to guess, I would say that the cipher itself was given to Colonel James Hartley, who died in 1893, or possibly to Captain Thomas Waverley, who died in 1891. Both dead, Holmes mused, which means the cipher would have passed to their heirs or executors. Watson, we must make inquiries into the estates of both these men. The cipher must be found before it falls into the wrong hands. We spoke with Forsyth for another hour, extracting what additional details we could about Pemberton's intelligence operations and the circumstances surrounding the creation of the Vermilion Cipher. Throughout, Forsyth remained cooperative but careful, revealing only what he deemed necessary and nothing more. He was a man who had kept secrets for a very long time and who would not easily abandon his discretion, even for Sherlock Holmes. As we prepared to take our leave, Forsyth gripped Holmes's hand firmly. Mr. Holmes, find the cipher before it falls into treasonous hands. Pemberton entrusted me with the key because he believed I would guard it with my life. I have done so for 5 years, and I shall continue to do so for as long as necessary. But the cipher itself, if it still exists, must be secured. The lives of hundreds of brave men and women depend upon it. You have my word, Colonel, Holmes replied solemnly. I shall not rest until this matter is resolved. The return journey to London was spent in intense discussion. Holmes was convinced that we were close to a breakthrough, that the pieces of the puzzle were finally beginning to fit together. Consider what we know, Watson, he said, his eyes bright with intellectual excitement. Sir Henry Ashworth, motivated by financial need and political ambition, learned of the Vermilion Cipher through his service under Pemberton. He hired the Black Lotus to steal documents from his brother that contained information about the cipher's location. Those documents pointed him toward either Hartley or Waverley, both now deceased. He has spent 2 years searching for the cipher among their effects, but has been unsuccessful. Meanwhile, he knows that Forsyth possesses the key, but he cannot simply steal it without first securing the cipher, as one is useless without the other. But why has he only now decided to murder his brother? I asked. Because something has changed, Watson. Either Sir Henry has finally located the cipher and now needs only the key to complete his prize, or he fears that our investigation will lead us to the cipher before he can secure it. In either case, he has decided that his brother must die, both to eliminate a potential source of information and to tie up loose ends. A man of Sir Henry's position cannot afford to leave witnesses. What is our next move? We must investigate the estates of Hartley and Waverley. One of them received the cipher from Pemberton, and it must still exist somewhere among their effects. I shall send telegrams this evening to various contacts, seeking information about what became of their personal belongings after their deaths. Meanwhile, we must set our trap for the Black Lotus. Tomorrow evening, we shall spread the word that Major Ashworth is being transferred, and we shall see who takes the bait. We arrived back in London as darkness was falling. Holmes immediately dispatched several telegrams from the station, then we took a cab to Baker Street. As we climbed the familiar stairs to our lodgings, I felt a growing sense of anticipation. The case was reaching its climax, and I sensed that events would soon move with dramatic swiftness. Mrs. Hudson greeted us with the news that a message had arrived for Holmes in our absence. It was from Inspector Lestrade of Scotland Yard, written in his characteristically blunt style. "Mr. Holmes, have posted 2 constables at St. Bartholomew's as you requested. Also have news regarding your inquiries about Chinese criminal societies. Can you call at the yard tomorrow morning?" Lestrade, excellent, Holmes said, reading the note. Lestrade may have uncovered information about the Black Lotus that will prove useful. Watson, I suggest we dine early and retire. Tomorrow promises to be a most eventful day. And there, dear readers, must we pause in our narrative at this most critical juncture. Holmes lies poisoned upon a hospital bed, the mysterious professor has vanished into the London night, and the duplicate key, our carefully prepared bait, has been seized by our enemy. Worse still, we have gazed upon the face of this criminal mastermind, yet his identity remains tantalizingly uncertain. Who is this elderly gentleman whose pleasant appearance masks such ruthless cunning? What connection has he to the Vermilion Cipher, and what dark designs drive him to such desperate measures? The investigation has taken a grave turn indeed. Holmes weakened, perhaps fatally. The professor at large, and in possession of what he believes to be the key. And somewhere in the shadows, unseen forces continue their machinations toward ends we can only dimly perceive. But take heart, for even from his sickbed, Sherlock Holmes's incomparable mind continues to work upon the puzzle. A photograph, a file of academic persons, and a flash of recognition may yet provide the thread that leads us through this labyrinth of conspiracy and deception. What revelations await us? Can Holmes identify the professor before he strikes again? And what new dangers lurk in the pages yet unturned? If you have enjoyed this chapter of our chronicle, I beseech you to express your appreciation by clicking the like button below, and do subscribe to ensure you shall not miss the continuation of this most extraordinary affair. Join us in Chapter 5, wherein the professor's true identity is revealed, new conspirators emerge from the darkness, and Holmes and Watson venture once more into mortal peril. Until we meet again upon these pages, I remain your faithful servant and chronicler, Dr. John H. Watson. The mystery deepens in Chapter 5.